All right, everybody. So welcome to this part two. So I kind of talked myself into a hole with this one in the last video. So I feel like since I mentioned doing this without using like chain string methods, that I should probably do an example where I kind of assume that, let's say the person asking you this question said, okay, cool, you solved it this way, but could you do it using a for loop? And could you do it without using, say, reverse? So how would you go about doing something like that, right? So that's what I'm going to do here. So let's go ahead and let's just assume that we had done this, and then the interviewer said, hey, no, I want you to do this. This is great, it works, but I want you to get rid of split, reverse, and join here. Okay, so how would I do that? Well, there's a couple of ways I can do it. Because if I get rid of split, reverse, and join, right, all of a sudden I get interesting things, right? Because these are the exact same words. So naturally they're going to be equal. And so in this case, what I want to do is I'm going to get rid of all of this. And what we're going to do now is actually declare these. Yeah, we're going to declare these differently. So we're going to go ahead and do the original string here. Okay, so we're still going to have OS be the original string variable. And we're still going to keep these down here as they are. Although I am going to just add something in here just to make it a little bit more easy on the eyes here. So we're just going to put a little dash line through there. Cool, yeah. So now we get to the ones below the line are actually the false, and the ones above the line are true. So you don't have to do that. That's something I'm doing here just for me. So, okay, cool. So now we're back basically to square one, right? So we have a function that we've written. It's called Palindrome. We're passing in a string, str, and now we're creating a variable inside of that function called os, which is the string to lowercase. And now we have our original string variable. So what I want to do for this is I'm going to go ahead and I want to go ahead and split that, right? So we still need to split this into an array. So what we're going to do is we're still going to do the split here. And let's just make sure that that's working still. Okay, so that is not working. Why is that not working? Oh yeah, because I didn't include that. Cool. Yeah, so because I didn't put the two quotes without a space, so there's no space in between those quotation marks. And this could be either single or double quotation marks, by the way, too. I just do single because I tend to use the double if I actually do a string in the traditional sense. So yeah, so we're getting that now. Cool. Okay, so we have the arrays now. But I can't use the reverse method or anything that I have to use a for loop, right? They put that requirement in there on me at this point now. So it makes it a little bit longer to do, but in some ways it does kind of help show the logic a little bit better, right? So I think it would be a fair question for someone to ask you to do it this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a for loop. So we're just going to say for, and we will set this up as such, and I'll walk you through this in case you haven't ever done a for loop in JavaScript before, or a for loop in either language for that matter. And we'll say I less than length and I plus plus, and then we put the curly brackets because we want to do things in this loop. So okay, so what's a for loop? Well, basically a for loop is telling us that we want to iterate through an array. So what that means is we have this variable I that we're setting to 0. So I represents the index value of the thing in the array. So for example, let's say I'm looking over here for a race car. If I said I equals 0 and I did something like OS bracket, square bracket 0, all right, and then I returned that or I console logged that, I should get R. All right, so we can test that real quick here to see if we actually get that. So instead of doing the for, let me console comment that out really fast here. And we will just do a console log, because we've already made this into an array. This should work. So we'll say OS square bracket, right? So that's indicating that we want something inside the array, and we want it to be at index 0. So we should get RATJ, cool. And if we do 1, you know, we should get the next letter, so on and so forth, right? The reason why 0 is the first letter is, if you're not familiar with it, in JavaScript, arrays, the first index is always a 0. So that's why you would see that. It's also why if you wanted to target the last item in a list, and if you didn't know the length of the array, you could just do length -1, and that's going to give you the last element inside of that array as well. So a little fun fact there. And I'll talk a little bit more about arrays also, I think, in a separate video too, where I just go over arrays and kind of like different array methods and how they work and all that kind of good stuff there. So, but that's kind of what we're doing here. So, all right, cool. So that's basically how we target this. And then what we're doing with the for loop is, instead of having to type in, you know, each individual element every single time, we're doing this automatically. So it's going to basically just first look at the first element, the 0 index. Then it's going to check to make sure that the 0 is less than the length of the array. And then if it is, it's going to do whatever it needs to do, and then also now set I as 1 higher than what it was. So then the next iteration I would equal 1, the next iteration I would equal 2, 3, so on and so forth, until it got to the last element in the array. So basically, it's going to, whatever we put inside of this for loop here, it's going to run on every single element in that array, in that order, right? So what I need to do here, though, since I can't do the reverse in this case, I am going to actually create another array here, and this is going to be RS. And in fact, you know what we're going to do, because these aren't actually strings at the moment, I'm going to change this from OS to OA and RA, right? So original array and then reversed array. And we'll change this to original string variable as an array. Right, just to kind of make it, you know, a little better there. This one, on the other hand, though, we're not going to actually set as anything right now. We're going to set it as an empty array. And what this is going to do is, after we run the function we're going to write in here, basically, or the logic inside this for loop, it's going to create this array for us kind of dynamically. So, and I'll show you that here in a second as well. So this will be the reversed string variable as an array. So, as an array. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, for every element in the array, so I'm going to say I want to put that element into this new array. So I'm going to basically create a new array from this. And what that's going to let me do, it's going to let me now basically take whatever the first element is, pop it into this array. So what it'll do is, let's say, for example, in we'll use John here as an example. So we know that the first letter in John is J, right? So I want to take that and I want to put that inside of this array. Now, there's a couple ways I can do that, right? So I could do something like this. I could say ra.push, and I'm going to do this, I think, the wrong way here first, just to kind of show you why you wouldn't want to do it this way. So we're going to push OA, oops, no quotation marks because it's a variable. I'm going to push OA at I into RA. Then what I want to do is I want to console log RA. So, and we'll actually do it this way as well. I'll put this as a string variable just to kind of make it a little bit clearer here. Okay, and if we run that, OS is not defined. Oh, yep, because I changed that. So, yeah. Cool. All right, so now what we're getting is, as we see, right, I'm getting this array, but if we look, that's not what we want, right? Because that's the exact same as console logging the first array, right? is to check that. Let's do this. Oops. This is OA. So like, oops, uh-oh, okay, so in this case, we haven't reversed anything, right? We've created the second array, but we haven't actually reversed anything. And just to show you that we have actually created that array, we're using this for loop here. I'm going to copy this, I'm going to paste it up here above the for loop. And as you can see, before we have the for loop hit, we're getting nothing, right? It's an empty array. Then once we actually have the for loop and we call it again, now we're actually having this new array that's been created, right, using these elements from this original array here. So, okay, so how can we fix that? Well, the reason why this is happening is push is great, right? Like push is something I use all the time when I'm trying to create arrays from something like another array or whatever. The problem though is push always puts the element in question, in this case, whatever the element is at OAI, it's pushing that to the end of the array that's declared here, right? So what we're doing is we're basically pushing in the case of say John, we're taking the J, we're pushing that in. Okay, that's cool, right? We have J there now. But then when I get to the next element, which is the O, it's putting it at the very end, so it's putting it right back behind John, right? So the other way we can do this is there's another method called shift. Unshift, right? Is it unshift? I don't use the one as often, so I'm going to think about this one for a second here. I'm going to go look it up real quick. There we go. Unshift. Sorry, I had it reversed. So unshift, not shift. Sorry. Shift removes the element from the first part of the array. I always reverse the two for some reason. Yeah. So unshift is one that basically does the same thing that push does, only it is to the front of the array. So what this means is we put the J in just like we did before with the push variable. Only in this case we're putting in the J. Then when we get to the second one, we get to O, and instead of putting it at the end behind J, it's going to put it at the first index in the new array. So whatever it's pushing, it's always going to push in at array 0 and then push everything else back, right? So it's a little weird, right? Like I would have thought like push should have been like this should have been push, right? And then maybe unshift should be the way around. I don't know. But just keep that in mind. Like I said, you'll get used to this, use them more often. Like I said, I don't use shift or unshift very often. Shift would be the opposite of this, so it would just remove the first index from the array, I believe. And then pop would take the last index off of the array as well. So, so that's kind of what we're seeing here. And yeah, so okay, so we have that. So now we've created this RA array, and as we can see here, it's a reversed array. So let's say they don't want me to use join either, right? I don't know, maybe this person's really, really horrible. And they still want me to check this. So, okay, so what I can do now is I'll do what we would think we would normally do, right? Is we'll do the same thing we did beforehand. In the last example where I say, okay, let's check to see if OA is equal to RA, all right? Okay, so we have that. And we'll say if it is, console log, let's say OA is a palindrome, right? We'll say string is, yeah. All right. And if not, is not a palindrome. All right, cool. So if we look at this, what we would assume we would get, right, is if the two arrays are the same, then we would get a return that's true, which would then trigger this console log here, and it would say the string's a palindrome. If they're not the same, then it would do this, right? It would come back as false, and so we get the second statement for the else. So let's run that and see what happens. Okay, so here's a problem, right? We're getting string is not a palindrome for all of these. So why is that? Well, in JavaScript, arrays are never equal to each other, right? So every array is its own unique thing. So anytime I try to compare two arrays together, it's always going to come back as false, right? So the way I fix that now, because I can't compare those two things, so what I can do though is I can check basically using a for loop again, right? So I create this new array, and then what I can do is I can say for, and we'll just do let I again, right? So I for index equals 0. We know both arrays are the same length, so I can use either array. I'm just going to use OA for this. And then we want to make sure we iterate up so it actually works. And then what we need to do is we're going to have to compare every index to the same index in the array, right? So if I sit there now, for example, and I say, let's kind of, for example, here, let's do this. So this we know doesn't work, but let's say instead of just comparing the whole array, I just want to compare element at 1 in both arrays, right? So if I do that, now I get basically what we want, right? But the problem is, in this case, I'm having to then hard code every single one of these, right? So this is where the for loop comes in, is instead of having to type in, OA0, do these things, and then OA1, do these things, OA2, and so on and so forth, I'm just going to use a for loop here to have it kind of run automatically here. So what I need to do in this case is basically something like this, where we iterate through the arrays, and we iterate through both the arrays, and we say if, and I actually probably want to create another variable or something, so so like here we'll say let we'll say let pal, right? Yeah, let pal equal true. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to assume that this starts off with the letter being a palindrome, right? So we're going to say if it's true, we're going to set it as true initially, right? And then we're going to say, okay, if true, now what I want to do is, actually, I want to move this up here, I think. Okay, so we're going to set that as true, and then we're going to come in here in the for loop, and we're going to say, if OA at I is equal RA, I don't remember what I called it, at I, then we're going to keep pal as equaling true. However, and this comes in else, or an if-else statement, else-if statement, else if OA at I is not equal to RA at I, then I want to set pal to false. And so what that lets me do is it lets me iterate through this array and then check to see if this thing is false. So then I could say if pal equals true, I want to do this, otherwise, else if pal equal false, I want to do this. So now if I did all this right, which I probably didn't because I'm doing this kind of on the fly here, but if I did it right, then what should happen is we've declared a variable here as pal for being true. It's going to come through here, it's going to iterate through the arrays, it's going to compare each index in the array. As long as they are the same, it's going to continue just to say pal is true, pal is true. However, if it ever hits a point in one of those arrays where the indexes in both arrays are not the same, it's going to set pal to false. Okay, yeah, no. I need to, yeah, do it because it'll just reset it back. So that's right. Okay, well actually, now what I could do is I can do this. So, so what I can do is I can say and pal equal true. All right, and just for maybe like edge cases or something that I could say, or pal equals false. All right, let's see if this works. It does not work. Why does it not work? For line. Pal equals false. I'm not inside the for loop. Oh, let me get rid of that request. I don't need that right now. For. Could actually set that up here. Oops. Okay, well, this is new. I don't think that changed anything. Okay, so it's saying there's an unexpected token. Oh. That's what happens when you type in text. Cool. Okay, so that supposed to get worked in the... Yeah, okay, so it did work. Perfect. Yeah, so now basically what we've done is, like I said, we've declared this variable as pal up here, right? And again, you can declare this as anything as long as it kind of makes sense. So we'll just say, I don't know, the until otherwise, or something along those lines, right? Cool. So in this case, yeah, we were setting this initially as true. So we're just going to assume that it's a palindrome the whole way through until we find otherwise, right? So then it's going to come in here and it's going to, create the new array. So we're going to create the new array, RA. Then we're going to come down here and we're going to compare each element at each index in the arrays. And if the item or the element at index I is the same for OA as it is for the element at index I for RA, and pal is still equal to true, which it is here, it's going to keep pal at true. If, however, those two elements are not the same, or if pal ever equals false, it's going to come back as pal equals false. And then it's going to, so it runs through all of this and everything. Now, of course, you could also break out of this like with return statements and break statements and things like that, but I'm not going to do those here. And then it would run this code here where it's going to check after it's run through all of this. If this is still true, then that means that obviously every single element inside of the array was the same at every single element inside the array of the reversed array. And therefore this would stay true. Therefore, we're going to get the string as a palindrome. However, if at any point during that it caught there were two elements at the indices that we were checking that were not the same, then it's going to change that to false, which is going to trigger this line of code here, and it's going to return that the string is not a palindrome. All right? And then we can go ahead and just get rid of that right there too, so we don't need that either. All right, so there we go. And we know the first two are palindromes and the second two are not palindromes. So that's just another way of potentially solving the problem here. So like I said, you can either do it where you chain methods together, you can do it this way. There's probably a way with like regex. I'm just not familiar with it. And I'm sure there's other ways out there as well. So if you know a different way of doing it, go ahead, put a description or link your code in the comments below, or a link to your Git repo or a REPL site or whatever, so other people can see it, because I definitely want to kind of create a community where everyone is able to learn from each other, so we all become better developers and hopefully are happy in our chosen career. So but that is pretty much it. So this is just, like I said, another variant of how to do it. If for some reason they said that you know, were only able to say use split, right? And like your shift methods and things. You know, obviously, if you can use the methods and things that you use for string methods and stuff like that, that'd be great. But, you know, again, it's a challenge, right? So they're trying to kind of test your knowledge. So they may come back and say, hey, can you do this using just for loops or something else? So I think having multiple ways of doing the same thing is definitely a good thing, because, you know, you never know when somebody might just decide to trip you up a little bit there, right? And kind of throw you a loop. So anywho, like I said, this is just, you know, 2 ways that I kind of came up with to do it. Like I said, there's probably tons of other ways out there. As long as you're getting the correct result, I don't really think there's a wrong way to do it. Unless, of course, you're, you know, at least not for this. Now, if you're dealing with other things like, you know, with big O notation and stuff like that, then obviously, yes, you're worried about run times and things. But in this case, we're not dealing with enough stuff to have that be an issue. So I think that's pretty much it. So, like I said, if you like this video, you know, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. I'm not really sure how this whole YouTube algorithm thing works or anything like that, and I'm not really trying to do this for any other reason than just to kind of help people out and help me out as well. So I hope you like this video, and I hope to see you guys for the next one, where we are going to be looking at, let's see what is next on the list. Oh, cool. We'll be looking at FizzBuzz. So that's actually one of my favorites. So cool. So I will see you guys in the next video, where we will talk about how you would go about solving the FizzBuzz challenge. Until then, have a good one, and I will talk to you guys or see you guys later. Bye-bye.